bad we're not doing this in person. We're both in the same city of Zurich, but let's get right into it. First of all, I mean, one thing I wanted to point out, I noticed today that Zurich's share price just this week reached 430 Swiss francs, the level at which it traded before the pandemic. It took a while to get there. A lot of other industries saw their stock prices appreciate and get back above that well before the insurance industry. How do you explain what's going on? Has the market kind of understood all of a sudden that insurance is actually a safe business and a growing business? How do you explain it?
No, definitely insurance is not a safe business. It's a very risky business. This is what we do for living. When the pandemic started, for us, it was quite interesting because it was 2 months after we presented our 3-year plan finishing at the end of 2022. And then February 2020, the pandemic started and our plans and our programs were just to go in the shredder. So we rebuilt completely our actions. We've been very agile. We took a totally different path than the one we have been strategizing for more than a year. And happily, at the end of 21, the things started coming together, and we will report on our full year results in 10 days roughly. And, we're very pleased with the achievements so far. We feel we are fully in the race to deliver to our shareholders all our targets for 2022. And actually, we feel that as we did before, we can even exceed these targets. But if I go back to how this started in January, February 2020, I almost cannot believe that. We have taken lots of risks and we've managed them. We have learned how to reduce the impact on our P&L. And we're prepared for new risks coming to us in the next months.
Yeah, well, let's talk about those risks. I mean, one of the reasons I always like talking to you, Mario, is you are sitting there looking around, peering around corners for what can go wrong in the world. And so it's worth spending some time with you. And I noticed actually just this week, we saw the World Economic Forum's Global Risk Report was released, and Zurich and you guys were critical and key partners in that. Topping the list, at least over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, seemed to be this question about the failure to tackle climate change. It's also one of your top priorities. I mean, maybe we could talk, let's go through those risks, but let's start with this one. I mean, how worried are you, and what is it, either not just for your children or grandchildren, but for your business about this fundamental risk?
It is definitely the most important risk. I mean, the attention of everyone is focused on the pandemic. We believe that the pandemic will be sorted out, or it is going to be sorted out. The transformation of our industrial sector, of our economy into a sustainable one is an incredibly complex task that we have to accomplish. And the failure to do it will create a significant distress. Am I worried? I'm never worried. I mean, my job is about managing the situation, providing solution alternatives, and finding a way to stabilize, the results to a positive outcome. And I still believe that we'll be able to do that. But action is needed now.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Glasgow, Scotland, and for the COP26, and I came to this relatively late, as a sort of seeing it as such an extraordinarily important business and strategic question. I guess one of the things though that I came away from that, and I sort of wonder about now, is what you mentioned, the COVID-19 epidemic, or has that actually made it harder for the world and businesses and governments to focus on reducing carbon emissions, which is of course critical to solving this quite fundamental question of climate change?
I don't know that. I'm not sure it did. The problem with the industrial transformation which is needed is that it's a multi-year program. Now, I've been leading Zurich now for 6 years, and hopefully I will have many more years of time to do that. Now, governments usually don't last very long. And if we want to make it sustainable, we need to have a perspective of at least the next 10 years, at least, if not longer. And that is the problem with politics and with governments about it, that they have a very short-term view. They focus on the next election. And pandemic is perfect because pandemic is short-term emergency, which governments can easily tackle. The transformation is probably the biggest effort for this world after the industrial transformation 2 centuries ago.
I mean, I guess the question, maybe to pose it differently, are we passing the test around the world in terms of we've got a short-term problem like a pandemic, which we should know how to deal
Yeah.
with. We should have this, and
Yeah.
yet we still seem to be faltering in different places around the world. How is that? What does that teach us about what is required to deal with this much more existential and longer burn, no pun
Yeah.
intended, question?
I think there are lessons learned from the pandemic. The first one is that the solution is not in the hands of everyone else. The solution is all of us have to contribute, as we did for the pandemic. The care with all of us put into avoiding COVID will be needed also for the transformation. Actions of everybody. I mean, we have been saying this inside Zurich since 5 years ago, that every single action matters. No action resolves, but every single action matters. And so we have been mobilizing people to do the right things individually, one by one in their families. And that's a lesson of the pandemic. The second thing is coordination. The pandemic has been fought with a reasonable coordination between macro regions, between states, and this will be needed also for the transformation. And the third important thing, which at least I learned from the pandemic, is you need data. All this transformation have to be fact-based, data-based. We need data. We need to use the science and the scientific knowledge to, just draw the future of our world. And without the data, everything, frankly, is useless.
And let's talk you mentioned sort of individual actions. Let's think about what you guys have done at Zurich. I mean, when it comes to things like reducing your carbon footprint. Now, if I remember, you did you were quite aggressive with travel, for instance.
Yep.
I think that was part of it. Maybe you could explain that a little bit, but also maybe tell us more about what you're doing specifically with your portfolio, because that's where you have the most leverage.
Yeah. So we did two different things. So first of all, we did not want to just talk to our customers or to the world. We started from ourselves. So what we did is we committed to reduce travel to 30% of what it was in 19, starting from this year. I mean, of course, it's easy to reduce during the pandemic, right? You just have no other choice than that. Now, assuming that this year will be a more normal one, we said for this year, our budget constraint will be less than 30% of what it was in 19. The second thing we did is we took some commitments on things which are important, for example, like printing. We committed to reduce the printing in steps, acting initially with internal printing, which of course consumes trees around the world, and then acting also with the printing to the customers up to 25. Third thing is that we took commitments on food and waste management. We're only using local foods, so we're not shipping foods around our offices and canteens, and we don't buy in each country food from other destinations in order to save some carbon. And we're committed to reuse all food and waters that we have in our premises, in our offices. And of course, we encourage also our colleagues to do the same at home. The things that everybody did, we took some commitments on our fleets, on our mobility patterns. This is by 2025, we will be completely electric, and all Zurich employees and related people will be on electric and not petrol heavy fuel cars. And the final thing, we also took some commitments on our buildings. to make our buildings very sustainable by 25. We listed a number of buildings that will be to the highest standards of sustainability, as is our head office in Switzerland, which I believe is still the highest environmental standard for Europe. This is what we did on ourselves, just to clear that we're not just talking to others. Then with the customers, we have done a number of things. So we created the first um, 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 net zero investment unit link product that exists in the life market for the customers. We have made commitments on investment management, so on investing on our assets and reducing the carbon footprint of our assets. And then on underwriting, we have progressively reduced our exposure to fossil fuels. We eliminated completely some industries, and then we're continuing with other kind of industries. I have to say, however, that not underwriting customers is something that I feel we have to do, but it's not a great solution because typically these customers find other insurers somewhere. What we really want to do is to really transform the energy. So it is a little bit simple, the solution of somebody who says, I'm not going to work with you because you're a polluter, but I'll let you work with somebody else. What we are trying hard is to really make the customers changing. So we created a unit, which is helping customers working on sustainability targets and creating these targets in their industries. And we saw a lot of traction over the past 2 years with the customers using the services of this unit and being helped by us in becoming more sustainable. Sorry, it took very long, but I'm very passionate about it. And apologies for taking time.
No, that's fine. It's the most important topic of the day, clearly. I mean, of this generation, if you will. But are there certain businesses that you're insuring today that you don't think you'll be insuring in 5 to 10 years?
Well, I mean, the easy one is there will not be insurance, I would say, in the next 5 to 10 years for fossil fuels. I mean, all fossil fuels are, have a destiny. Now, we still need to understand how we're going to make this world progressing without fossil fuels, but we got to do that. Fossil fuels is also employing some 10 million people. Now, renewable will employ many more than that. So it's not a job threat. But it's people will need to be reconverted. People will need to learn a new job. And the sooner we do that, the better. Because if we wait until late, then the transition will be dramatic.
Yeah, it's funny you say that's the difficult thing. We can see 5 to 10, you can see how you go from A to B, but it's that in between, right? It's like what happens. And you mentioned that there are 10 million people working in that in fossil fuels. I guess when I think about ESG, and one of our predictions written by yours truly was that the ESG moniker, this idea, should be blown up. It should just be three. We've lumped them all together, but it's quite interesting. If you said I could hit my E by stopping tomorrow and lending or underwriting to the insurance, the fossil fuel business, but then you've just knocked 10 million people, so your S score does poorly. How do you look at ESG in this whole? I mean, do you agree with us that this is ripe for a breakup?
I do. I think it's very difficult in this whole area of transformation of the world to be simple and to be drawn by simple statements. It's a very complex issue because eventually it affects also consumers' behaviors. We will have to live in a different way. We cannot pretend, not using any more diesel cars to travel 1,000 kilometers by car. We will have maybe to accept to travel less. I've been a strong advocate of a carbon cost in every good and service. I still think that this is the best solution of all, because if we have to pay for the pollution that we generate, we will understand how we need to adapt also in our consumptions and in our behaviors. And today we're not, seeing that in the prices. So it's a very complex transformation where labor has a part of it, where consumption is a part of it. At the end of the day, also social stability as a part into it.
Yeah, let's talk about social stability. I mean, I think that's a really, if I look at the risk report that came out, I think climate and then sort of climate related, weather related events. To me, those are, that one follows the other. But I think the other was the social cohesion erosion, or the erosion of social cohesion seemed to be on people's minds as one of the top risks that we face. Can you elaborate on that? How do you see it?
It is a huge risk because we're living in a very divided society. Over the past years, we have exacerbated the income discrepancies. The wealth is controlled by few people, as we know, and the distance between the rich and the poor has widened more than ever before. On top of that, there are social tensions by gender, by race, by religion, and there is a geopolitical conflict which is also creating further tensions. Now, the climate transformation, the sustainability transformation acts on this basis, which is already very, very scary by itself, and creates further tensions. And the risk is that all this will coalesce together and will create a burning platform somewhere in the world, and that will extend to other places. And this is why, we want to talk, we want to anticipate, we want to manage, and we want to take actions as early as possible.
And what is it? I mean, how do you, I mean, from an insurance business, I'm just trying to think. I understand how climate or weather or cybersecurity or some of these things are quantifiable or can be quantified. What about social cohesion? How do you price for that?
Well, you cannot. But the most difficult thing today for us is how to consider in our decisions for today and for the next years the transformation that needs to happen in the world. And the speed of this transformation is also unknown today because it is often managed by politicians, regulators, by external forces. So you cannot really guess it. You just have to follow that. So we can kind of manage the physical risk. That's our job. And we might be missing sometimes understanding it, but then we recuperate it. We study new data, and we feel that this is the business as usual, managing the physical risks. But the transformational risk, the social risk, the geopolitical risks, they're very difficult to be managed by an insurance company, and you just need to adapt quickly. You need to react. You need to help and support wherever needed, but you can't really anticipate that.
I won't go through all of the risks that were outlined in that report, but one of them that didn't seem to be there was the risk of a financial crisis. And I look at, I think there was debt crisis might have been somewhere in the top 10, but I look out at the asset price inflation that we've seen over the past couple of years. You and I could take a photo right now and sell it as an NFT for some, okay, maybe we wouldn't make as much money as Banksy's NFT, but the idea that you can financialize everything and that there is these extraordinary prices that are almost impossible to explain. Do you worry? I mean, where does financial crisis or are you concerned about asset price inflation and the impact that a disruption of that could have on society, business, and insurance?
Of course we are, and it's as part of the transformation. Some of this asset price inflation will become very visible because some assets will kind of disappear over the next years because simply their business reason will disappear. Now, can I just step on a side for a second, Rob? Because we're talking about risk, and now it's the beginning of the year, and I don't want the people to be taken by dramatic moods so early in the year. Now, as I said, that's our job to manage risks, and also this year for us is the 150 birthday anniversary of Zurich. So we have survived 150 years, and we look forward to surviving to the next 150. And if you think back what happened over the past 150 years, we have confronted ourselves with every kind of challenge and risk, and we managed to find a solution. Humanity is good at doing that. I mean, we humans are very adaptive and reactive, and we find solutions. Um, but it's not going to be easy because this is a point of change in the world, and it's a point of change for each one of us, and we will all be affected by this.
I wanted that when we talked sometime near the end of last year, I think you said something along the lines of there's no going back to the
Yeah.
relatively easy years of 4 years ago. And I thought that was interesting. And as I said, our book this year is A World in Transition, and transition being not change or not, sorry, not like reversion to mean or going back. It's actually a change. You're going from one state of being to another. And so, you know, these fundamental shifts are pretty fascinating. We talked about the energy transition and some others. You know, some of the let's talk about some others. Digital.
Yeah.
You know, we have just accordion, just absolutely accelerated the shift to all things digital. We're all doing these things from, you know, we would normally be sitting in some auditorium, maybe at the Zurich headquarters or Reuters headquarters doing
Yeah.
this, but instead we're all doing it from there. How has that shifted the insurance business, which I often consider an agent business, and a sort of you trusted agent helps you. I mean, how is the digitalization trend shaped what you're doing?
It's a fantastic trend for us because it allows us to establish a direct connection with the customers. Also, it allows us through the connectivity that digital creates to enter into devices, to follow the customers when they travel, to follow customers when they're at home and give them services. So it brings us the connectivity with the customers that we've been missing for centuries. In the previous 150 years of story that Zurich had, we missed that, and now we have it. So it's a fantastic opportunity to develop insurance as services to the customers, understanding what the customers want, who they are, where they are, and what we can deliver to them.
What about the workplace? Let's talk about that. I mean, probably at home, and so many of us are. I have a hard time imagining going back to a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday work, having our team do it. I just, it's hard to imagine that. How does that change the way you, I don't know, the way you think about your business?
Yeah, that for us, honestly, we don't see this as a new thing. I mean, when we plan for our American head office or Zurich, Swiss head office, we plan for 60-70% of occupation in every single day. So we already had the
vision.
So
even before the pandemic. Okay.
Even before the pandemic, we had the vision that 30% of people will constantly be at home, traveling somewhere else, and you don't need to find a space, an office for them. I think pandemic accelerated that. And again, I don't think there is any way back. I mean, for me, work has always been, you know, my connectivity, my iPad. I've been traveling, moving around, and you know, I work from everywhere with my tools, and I respected my commitments to the customers, to shareholders, to the board, wherever I was. So it is not new. We're not scared of that, and I think this is probably the easiest for us change, which is happening now. And it's the one that we're better prepared to manage than anything else.
I suppose it reduces the auto insurance business pretty substantially over time.
Well, auto will be reduced naturally, right? Because of all the changes in mobility, because of the need to be sustainable, we will use cars much less. If we think about 30, 40 years ago, the car was the symbolization of freedom. I mean, you wanted the car to be able to free up your life, right? It's not anymore, right? Now you can do many other things. And now probably you would use a bike or you would use a train. But I don't think that, and there is a trend in younger people that they don't even care to have a driving license. They don't care about owning cars.
Well, and robots will eventually drive it, electronic
Yeah,
vehicles and stuff.
eventually.
So I guess you're right. Let me just ask as sort of leadership question. I mean, you're managing a complex organization with businesses all over the world. The U.S., of course, is your second home, if you will, besides Switzerland. You've got 50,000 people. Let's say most of them have been or are working in offices of one. They're at home or that kind of. I mean, no business. I can't. I'm sure you didn't just graduate from business school, even though you are youthful, Mario, and a cyclist and all that. But nobody went to Harvard Business School or INSEAD or whatever and was taught a class on how to manage armies of people working from home. How have you found this as a sort of leader? I mean, what challenges has it posed for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody taught us, and I still remember in March 2020 that I started calling my colleagues saying, how do we get in touch with people? What technology do we have to talk to them? Because we need to find this out. Otherwise, this is a drama. And not slowly, very fast, we found the technology, the technological solution. We found the devices, and we were able to contact the people. I think the challenge now, the situation where we've been in 2020 and partially in 2021 is an extreme one, where we've been in lockdowns for months, which means that we haven't seen colleagues, other human beings, customers physically for months. That is extreme. That I hope is not going to come back ever. We need to have a routine where we can meet people, we can have physical meetings, we can go to offices, but not every day, right? With that, we can manage it. The most difficult thing to do virtually is to energize people. One of my jobs is to give people energy, confidence, to give them trust that we're doing the right things and this is going to work. How to do that in video is incredibly difficult. It takes, I discovered myself that my energy was sucked by the video much more than it would have been in a personal meeting. You interact, and so you pass something to the people and you get something from them, right? And at the end of a meeting, you often end up energized yourself, and hopefully you energize the people too. In a video, that's very difficult because you're talking to a screen. In the screen, you see a limited number of people. And I did town halls with thousands of colleagues, but I just saw 3, 5, 10, 15 of them. I didn't see the others.
Right.
That's the limitation today of technology. Maybe this will be resolved over time. But I'm optimistic that this extreme life that we've been living in 2020 and partially in 2021 is not our future, and it's not even our present.
Well, I guess that Mark Zuckerberg will have us all with our metaverse VR opticals or something on, but I'm with you. It's tough. Let me just before I go to Lisa, who's going to collect some of the questions that have been coming in from the audience, a quick lightning round of questions for you, just about in business. I mean, where do you see growth? What are the sort of areas for growth for insurance? What business lines or geographies do you see offering the most potential for Zurich?
We expect the commercial insurance still to grow significantly, double digits in 2022, driven by demand for protection, not just prices. We also expect that individuals will re-evaluate lines like accident and health and life, and there will be increasing demand for products in these lines of business. We expect that the saving component will remain very important and will keep growing double digits through 2022. And as you understand from this, we think that we're looking with optimism to 2022 results at the end of the year.
And what about consolidation? Where do you see further room for you did a relatively large deal last year, or I don't even know if it's closed, but I mean, where do you see, or what kind of scope do you see for consolidation in the business in Europe and in the US?
Yeah, we have been doing deals. However, we're not counting on consolidation. I mean, the reason for this is that the insurance world is in a complete transformation. In a world in transformation, insurance has to transform itself even faster because it's an old industry based on roots which go back to centuries. Now, if you need to transform yourself, acquiring another business which needs a transformation is not a great solution. It just adds complexity. So we've been buying specific properties that we thought would fit well with our needs in specific markets. But in general, we don't think that the solution to this is acquisition, is consolidation. We think that the solution to this is providing to the customers what they need in this different world, in this digital society, in this very, very different sustainable world that we're trying hard to create in the next years.
So is that like insure tech things that you could see? Is that where you're focused? I mean, insure tech being, digital insurance businesses or startups.